Welcome to New at NAMT, the next wave of musical theater writers, a series dedicated to spotlighting the emergent voices in musical theater. Every interview provides a unique glimpse into the creative minds behind the next big musicals. So, whether you're a producer, theater lover, or even simply curious about the future of musical theater, New at NAMT offers a front row seat to a new generation of writers. Today, on New at NAMT, we'll be talking with the winners of the Musical Theater Songwriting Challenge for high school students alongside their program mentors. Presented by the National Endowment for the Arts, NEA, in partnership with the National Alliance for Musical Theater, NAMT, in collaboration with Concord Theatricals, Disney Theatrical Productions, the NMPA S.O.N.G.S Foundation, the Musical Theater Songwriting Challenge is a unique educational and professional development opportunity for high school students to write and showcase a song that could be in a musical. This past year, 7 winning songs by 8 student songwriters were selected to win the Songwriting Challenge. Those winning student songwriters traveled from all across the country to New York City in June 2024 for Winners Weekend, where their songs were fully orchestrated and performed live in a concert by Broadway performers. You can still watch the concert at home by heading over to the namt.org/challenge and see the first ever performance of these songs for yourself. Over the next little bit, we'll talk with the winners about their songs and the full Musical Theater Songwriting Challenge experience. It's time to lower the lights, raise the curtain, and LX1, go on New at NAMT. I am your host, Jean-Paul Yovanoff from Musical Theater Radio, and joining me each week is a rotating cast of Songwriting Challenge program mentors as our co-host. Before we get to today's interview, let's welcome this week's co-host, Jesse. Jesse, how are you today? It's good to see you again.
It's good to see you as well. I'm doing great. Just out here in rainy Oregon and enjoying, life.
Nice. Well, before we get to talking to our guest, tell us a little bit about yourself and your involvement in the Musical Theater Songwriting Challenge.
Yeah, I'm a composer, lyricist, and writer, music director, writing a ton of musicals, specifically Sueños, our American musical, and Zapata, Folklorico Superhero musical, which were both NAMT grant awardees. My involvement in this year's musical theater songwriting challenge was I was on the panel to I was actually an orchestrator and helped orchestrate our upcoming guest Luisa's song and a couple of other songs. I also was a mentor and helped kind of give feedback and guide and yeah.
That's awesome. And I already play your stuff on our station, so it's always great to have you talk to you again.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for doing that. I get the notifications whenever it has a radio spin and it's really cool. So yeah,
Oh,
thank you.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And now that we know our co-host, let's get to the interview. Today we are speaking with Luisa Paraguassu. Luisa's song Talk Pretty was selected as one of the winners for the Songwriting Challenge this past year. Talk Pretty is about the experience of never learning your maternal language and the pain that can accompany such a feeling of disconnect with members of your family, the shame some people feel but really shouldn't have to, and how the longing for connection goes beyond language. Louisa, welcome to New at NAMT.
Well, thank you guys so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk with you guys about the Songwriting Challenge and NAMT.
I'd love for you to introduce yourself to the listeners and tell us a little bit more about your song, Talk Pretty. What inspired it?
Yeah, sure. My name is Luisa Paraguassu. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm currently a freshman at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And I live in Mooresville, North Carolina, which is pretty close to Charlotte. But I only just moved to North Carolina about 3 years ago. Before moving here, I lived in Shanghai, China for 5 years. And then before that, I lived in Iowa, and for 9 years. But I was born in Brazil, and that's where my family is originally from. And Talk Pretty is basically a song that's meant to be sort of a conversation between a second generation Brazilian American granddaughter named Mariana and her Brazilian grandmother, Iara, who, due to some, medical cerebral complications, doesn't really remember any English. And then Mariana, the granddaughter, doesn't speak any Portuguese. And so the song is about Mariana trying to communicate with her grandmother, who's kind of slowly passing away, and she feels like she's losing time.
I actually had the privilege of orchestrating Talk Pretty, and immediately when I heard it, I forgot to mention I was also one of the judges to select folks. And when I heard this song, it just immediately spoke to me, mostly because of the beautiful writing, but also because of this like back and forth between Portuguese and English. And I thought it was so cool. As somebody who writes a lot of bilingual work, I was so connected to it. So I was like, "Hey, Frankie, Amanda, I really want to orchestrate this song." And they're like, "Great, because we thought of you." Um, so yeah, Luisa, can you share with us a little bit more about your process and kind of how you kind of go through the storytelling of it, and what does that all kind of look like?
Yeah, sure. And thank you so much, Jesse, for saying that. That means a lot coming from you, especially. But yeah, so I think the writing of this song was pretty spontaneous. I actually only found out about this competition like early January, and so I didn't have too much time to write it because I think it was due the 31st or something like that. And then I kind of put it off because like I was doing like college applications and everything. So I was like, shoot, like I probably don't have much time to write this. And so I sort of wanted to write it. I think whenever I do, I love writing songs just in general, but I've never written anything in like the musical theater realm before. So I think it was pretty spontaneous process for me. I sort of just had like the image in mind of like someone talking to their grandmother who was like in a hospital bed, like at their bedside table, and I was just trying to think of that. And I think I just sort of wrote the song in like that hour, and it I think the end product that I sent to you guys was pretty similar to like the first draft. But yeah, I think it was just pretty spontaneous because like I think especially when I write things, I have to be really focused on like whatever emotion it is that I'm trying to capture, and like I really love lyrics. So I think I was just trying to tune into that, I guess, and so I just had to do it like all in one sitting. But yeah, I think that was basically it for me.
I have to ask, like, do you start with lyrics or do you start with music?
I think I usually just do it both at the same time.
Yeah,
But
that's awesome.
I might have like sort of like a line that I really like and that I try to incorporate, but usually I find it so cool people that can like have like a poem or something and like just put music over that, but I don't think I can do that. I They usually just come like sort of in tandem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The characters in your song have a conversation in two different languages, Portuguese and English, and you include the phrase no sabo. Correct me if I'm saying that wrong, in the lyrics. Can you tell us what being no sabo means and why you wanted to explore this idea in the song?
Yeah, so nosabo is sort of a colloquial term that describes someone usually who's like of Latino ancestry and doesn't speak their ancestral language, and like in this case would be Spanish for a lot of Latinos. And it literally means like does not know, but it's like grammatically incorrect. Like no one like in Spanish you don't say no sabo, so like it's like even more of like a play on words. Like so but basically, no sabo isn't really used much in like the Brazilian community, to be honest, but like because we don't speak Spanish, we speak Portuguese. But
Hmm.
but it's still something that I think is kind of sad because I think growing up in like the international community, I knew a lot of because I went to international school in Shanghai, and so I got to meet like a bunch of people from so many different places, and a lot of them didn't speak their parents' language or something like that. And I think a lot of the time you can feel sort of, I don't know, a bit ostracized by your own community for not having that connection to your identity, even though it doesn't make you any less of anything if you don't speak your language or if you don't look a certain way. But I think people usually think that it does because I think people put a lot of weight on certain parts of identity, and if you don't conform to those things, you aren't really accepted by the whole a lot of the time,
Sure.
which is really unfortunate. And so I always heard people saying like no sabo to like my Spanish speaking friends or who weren't Spanish speaking but their parents were, or like kids who grew up, not speaking Mandarin but their parents were Chinese or like something like that. Like it's just like it's a sort of a difficult thing to navigate when you're little and like having that, things that don't really conform to, someone's idea of what you should be. So, and I think I wanted to sort of explore that like connection with people kind of goes beyond this like mutual intelligibility that like comes from just like speaking a common language. Like you don't just have to speak the same language because people connect on so many other, you know, planes. Like you can have like facial connections and like body language and things like that. Like there's so many other ways to communicate with people that goes beyond just like speaking the same language. So I think I wanted to sort of talk about that a bit, I guess.
That's awesome.
Let's talk about Winter's Weekend. What was the most memorable part of traveling to New York City with your family? What was it like to share the experience with them?
Yeah, so I think it was Winter's Weekend, I think is genuinely has been one of the coolest weekends of my entire life. It was awesome. And I think it was really cool having my brother as my chaperone, which like he was probably not the most qualified to be my chaperone, to be honest, but he's a great person and he loved being my chaperone. And it was really fun, I think, for him because he's like his name's Felipe and he was, you know, he did everything with me during he's like my best friend. He's the coolest person ever. And so we did the whole weekend together and it was awesome just having him go through everything. And he is, you know, going to school for screenwriting. So I think it was cool for film. So I think it was cool for him to see sort of like this sort of side of, you know, the theatrical stuff and everything like that. And I think he really liked it. And my parents also went. We were super lucky to have my parents go and my brother go. And I think it was like the happiest experience of their, I've never seen them so happy. Like I think they were so they had like a great time. So I really loved it. I loved going to I think it was Gail's Broadway Rose. It was so cool. And like seeing Three Houses, the musical was also amazing. But yeah, everything was great. So
Let's go back to the studio during Winter's Weekend. How did it feel hearing your songs fully orchestrated for the first time?
yeah, so I think that was super amazing too. I don't think I ever thought I would experience something like that, like ever in my life. I have written songs before, but I think usually they're a pretty like personal experience for me. Like it's kind of something that I keep to myself. Like I'll, you know, release them sometimes, but even then it's like I was the only one who ever touched them. But I think it was really cool to sort of have something that started from me, but not only belonged to me anymore. Like it was partially yours too, Jesse. And like I think that was really cool to see how like other people built on it. And then like just having other people play it, like I never thought I would experience that ever. So I really appreciated that. So thank you guys.
What was it like working with Shireen Pimentel and Stephanie Machado, who performed "Talk Pretty" in the Winter's Weekend concert?
Yeah, so I think working with Shireen and Stephanie was really, really cool. They were both just like amazing singers and performers. So I love just like watching them. It was awesome. It was really cool to talk to Stephanie because she's Brazilian too. So that was awesome. And Shireen is just like such a sweet person. So I think both of them were just so good at what they do. And it was just really cool to watch them, you know, do what they do best. So I loved watching them and seeing, you know, their own takes on something that I wrote, which is crazy to me that they were even singing it. So.
How has participating in the songwriting challenge impacted your growth as a songwriter and artist?
Yeah, so I think for like a long time, at least growing up, I used to really want to be a singer or, you know, a songwriter when I was younger. But I think I don't remember when, but at some point in, you know, my childhood, I sort of abandoned that dream of like pursuing music as a career. I think for some reason I used to think that music like wasn't something very altruistic. Like I thought that it was something like which I don't believe anymore at all. But at the time when I was little, I used to think that it was like, you know, egotistical to follow music because it's something that like only I loved and like how could that help anybody else if it's just something that I love doing? But then something that I learned through the songwriting challenge, which I think I learned like way too late, but I learned it in the songwriting challenge was that like anything that sort of that you do from like a place of love can help other people or it can connect with other people. And like music and art has that capacity too. And, you know, it can sort of help people find the words to like express some sort of like emotions and it can help them feel like less alone and things like that and give them words to express whatever it was that they were feeling. Sorry, my dog just coughed. But that they were feeling, but they didn't really know how to express. And so I think I'll always be grateful for this experience for sort of showing me that it's not really only acceptable, but it's also, admirable to kind of cling to your dreams. And that was something that I really admired about my like fellow winners because I think most of them, I would say everyone except I think maybe one or two were thinking of pursuing music in like college and everything. And I just really admired them for doing that because it was just like something that they all dreamed about. I thought that was so cool. And one of the other winners too, told me that like the experience that I was describing in the song was something that happened to them. And I thought that was so cool because like it was just felt like it was really connecting with somebody, and I felt really happy that it was able to sort of help someone. So yeah, I think it really, really impacted my growth, is what I'll say.
Nice. From your experience in the songwriting challenge, what's the one piece of advice you'd pass on to other young songwriters dreaming of this opportunity?
I think I would say that you really never know what could happen. Like I think there's no I guess there's no I don't know. There's nothing wrong with just like putting yourself out there. There's no risk really, especially with this competition because you don't, which is really wonderful. You don't have to pay anything to participate, like even to send in your submission, which is very unique. Like, so I thought that was great. So you literally don't lose anything by, just putting yourself out there, and you don't know what could happen. Like I could never have conceived that I would win at all. Like I really didn't think that that would happen. So, you never know. Things happen every day. So I think I would just say put yourself out there and you lose nothing. You only gain things because even if you don't win, you do get some pretty amazing feedback from people that are in the industry. So that was great. So that's what I'd say.
Louisa, thank you so much for joining us today and introducing the listeners to yourself and to your song Talk Pretty.
Thank you guys so much for having me. And thank you to the National Endowment for the Arts, Concord Theatricals, Disney Theatrical Productions, and NMPA Song Foundations for all their support in making this program possible.
Of course, I also want to thank this week's incredible co-host, Jesse, for joining us today. Jesse, tell us what's coming up next for you.
Oh, so much, but I'm so grateful. The most immediate thing that's coming up is I have a workshop, a developmental workshop production of my musical Sueños happening in California at Las Positas College in March 2025. So if you are in Northern California, would like to travel out there, you get to see a first version, a first draft version of what it looks like on its feet.
You just give me one more reason to head out to the West Coast to check that out.
Come on out. We'll give you big hugs.
Fantastic. Before we go, Louisa, you've already accomplished so much. Can you tell us and the listeners what's next for you?
Yeah, so right now I think I'm just trying to get through, my first year of college. But also by the way, Jesse, that sounds amazing, so congratulations. But
Thank you.
but I think, in terms of music, I've started, exploring some other types of music that I like. I joined the jazz combo at my school, and that was awesome. I never really thought I would get into that, so that was great. But and then I'm working on trying to create some sort of musical idea with my brother, which has been really cool. So I'd be writing the music and he'd be doing all the screen stuff and all the dialogue and everything, which is really exciting. But I don't know, I think just kind of seeing where things go. But thank you guys so much again.
A pleasure. And congratulations once again. I look forward to seeing, what happens with you in your life in the future.
Thank you.
That's all for today's interview, but we will be back with another fantastic winner and co-host next week. Once again, I am your host, Jean-Paul Yovanoff, and on behalf of NAMT and MTR, thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you in the theater.